Perfect.
Hello there. I think we are catching up with time, if I'm not wrong. Can you give a thumbs up out there, audience? I think we are good. We are in time right now. Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So we have AI business case happening right now. So what is it all about? If you're curious enough, so hang on. Here goes. Introducing Swapan. Thank you so much for being here, and then Mr. Dr. Shailesh as well. Over to you, Swapan. Take over the fireside.
Perfect. Thanks, Santosh, and thank you everyone for joining us. I'm Swapan Rajdev, so I'm the CTO and co-founder of Haptic. We're one of the world's largest conversational AI companies. Basically at Haptic, we work with enterprises to improve their customer experiences, by helping build intelligent virtual assistants, right? So that's what we do. So everything around conversation AI. And today I am joined by Dr. Shailesh Kumar, who is the chief data scientist and runs the Center of Excellence AI ML at Geo. To people who are in the AI ML field, I'm sure Dr. Shailesh Kumar needs no introduction. But Dr. Shailesh, if you don't mind, can you say a few words about yourself? Just to get to know you a little bit more.
Yes. Thanks, Mumbai AI Summit, and thanks, Swapan, for doing this. So, quickly, I currently lead the AI Center of Excellence, and we're going to talk about what we do. But broadly, yeah, I grew up with the field for the last 20 years, starting with UT Austin, and then working my way through different companies. And so a lot of my talks and other things are also public, and learned a lot of things, worked in different kinds of industries, businesses, all the way from retail to now telecom to Ola and others. So I can share some of those insights during this fire chat, and obviously keep sharing whenever there's an opportunity. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, your learnings from Ola and then Google, Microsoft, Yahoo, I think there's a lot of, great insights we can all get. So excited for this. For, everyone, the topic of conversations is around, how, basically Center of Excellences, innovators, there's business, there's technology. How does it all come together to really kind of do this? And obviously, no one better than obviously Dr. Shailesh Kumar to kind of tell us about all that. So Dr. Shailesh Kumar, before we start, right, and I think would love to get to know what is the mission and what is the mission and vision of the Center of Excellence you're running, right? Like how do you look at it, and what is the impact and what is the goal that you are trying to achieve while you run the Center of Excellence at Geo?
Yes. So I have three broad goals. So the first goal that we are going towards is to build what I call the AI stack for India. So today, if you look at the AI stacks, if you will, we have AI stack for the West. We have the AI stack for the China, but we don't have an AI stack for India in general. What does that mean is we don't have very good speech capabilities in Indian languages. We don't have language understanding capabilities in Indian languages. We don't have even part of speech taggers in Indian languages, right? We don't have machine translation across Indian languages. So we don't have face recognition system built for the Indian faces, right? So this whole spectrum of what does AI stack look in the Indian context with our diversity of languages, culture, people, and all of that is one of the themes. And so we have teams around speech, vision, language, and all of that, building that AI stack. Second part is we are going to apply this stack in two ways. One is what we call AI for India, and one is AI for Reliance. So those are my two customers, if you will. So AI for India means we are going to work on social themes of AI. So today AI has been applied to e-commerce, to marketing, to all that, to gaming and many such advertising industries, but it has not yet been applied to the real people issues like agriculture, healthcare, education, mobility, and things, the environment and energy, right? So what we have done, we have started with agriculture and healthcare as our two um, areas where we want to make sure that AI will be applied, and with digital platform already available, what can we do on top of it for these two ecosystems, right, for the country? So in healthcare, we are looking at how do we build the electronic health record of the country, how do we integrate all the different medical institutions, for example, testing, pharmacy, doctors, hospitals, all in one place. How do we then do things like AI doctor in the Indian context, right? And how do we personalize those advisories for the patients and deliver them in all Indian languages to anybody who can understand only speech or only Punjabi? How do we deliver all that, right? So the bottom stack is going to help us deliver, healthcare, for example. Similarly, agriculture, how do we deliver advisories to farmers by bringing together, the IoT data, the satellite data, the soil data, the medical and agriculture domain knowledge, and again language and speech capabilities together, right? So we are building these two ecosystems, and AI is just a small part of these ecosystem, right? There's a whole bunch of infrastructure,
Yeah.
sensor, data layer, and all of that. So then AI is part of that. So we are now taking a solution thinking and an ecosystem thinking more than a tool thinking, like AI is one of those components. The third
Got it.
part of the matter is what we call AI for Reliance. So Reliance is obviously, like, not just one business. We have multiple businesses. So how do we do retail better? How do we do telecom better? How do we do all those hydrocarbons and refineries better? So how do we do all those businesses better from a intelligence and automation perspective? Is the journey that all such companies are taking, right? So when Amazon started, it did the infrastructure, and now it is
Hmm.
improving with intelligence. Same thing with every company. Every ecosystem is improving with AI and those capabilities. So that's our third chapter.
Got it. No, very interesting. And I think what you said. One thing which was very interesting, which is AI for India, right? So we have AI for the West, we have AI for China. Would love your thoughts on what are you seeing in AI for India? What are some of the challenges, right? So obviously one is the algorithms and maybe the data, right? But you also said you're looking at the solution level and not just AI is a part to get to the right solution. Are you seeing and are you foreseeing issues which are technology and technological nature? Are there more issues than that? Are they cultural issues? And what will it get us to get there, right? So I think your thoughts on just what you've seen so far.
Yes, yes. So it is all over the place. So let's start with the sensor layer, right? So if you look at why e-commerce has succeeded, is because the sensor layer is very good, right? We can track every click and we can analyze it,
Mm-hmm.
but there is no such sensor layer in education, right? A kid does the homework and the copy goes to the dustbin at the end. There is no sensor layer, if you will, in healthcare, right? The doctor writes a paper prescription and then you go and take the medicine and nobody knows what's happening, right? So with and same thing with agriculture, we don't have a sensor layer, right? Soil IoT, satellite data, all of that in one place. So sensor layer is one challenge. How do we uplift India at that layer? So we have connectivity, but we need to build sensor so the data can come in. So that is the first layer. Second is the connect with the people. So whenever we think of natural language processing, we keep thinking English language processing. But there are so many beautiful languages in India, and now I know how to think about COVID guideline that comes in all the phones in so many languages. Now we know how to say that. That is
Yeah.
so beautiful. And when I hear that in a new language, it's just beautiful languages we have. So instead of saying, no, no, my farmers have to learn English, then they will become digital. My, patients in villages have to learn English, only then they can use the AI doctor. We need to bring technology to them by making it convenient for them to use, instead of saying, no, you need to learn how to use a keyboard in English, and only then you are digitally savvy. So for us, this part of AI, which is about speech and language, is not about cool stuff, right? That I can tell Alexa that, hey, change my channel, and it does it, and we are all very happy about it. That
Right.
is a convenience use case. For us, speech and language is about inclusion, because only 30% of Indians are on to the digital and AI bandwagon right now. What about the rest of the Bharat, if you will? And unless like Haptic builds a chatbot in all Indian languages, we are not done. Unless
Yeah.
we build an AI doctor which can understand all Indian languages, we are not done. Unless we can do e-commerce in all Indian languages, we are not done, right? So there's a huge charter ahead of us, which is, do what you do well in English, but then start percolating that into the interfaces to all the Indians. And it could mean many things. And we launched a
Yeah.
Machli app recently. I don't know if some of you have seen it. So we built it completely speech first. That means the fishermen shouldn't even have to read the text, and we made it completely local. There is no English in that, right? So
Oh,
if
wow.
we build apps that are speech first, both speech to text and text to speech, and vernacular first, right? All Indian languages first. That is when we have really brought AI to the masses. Until then, we are just solving these, convenience problems in English for a very small group of people. Yeah.
Got it.
So those are the two big challenges. The third challenge is what I call the trust challenge, which is,
Mm.
Flipkart addressed the trust challenge of e-commerce by saying cash on delivery. But now imagine if you are building an ecosystem which says, I'm going to give your child education advisory of what to study, or if I'm going to give as a doctor AI, I'm going to give you a diagnosis and a medicine and a prescription, or as a farmer, if I give you, this kind of an advisory, how do you build trust in people that an AI system on the back is more trustworthy, or actually enough trustworthy, than an expert in the back, right? So India and humanity is not ready yet to say that what a doctor will do as a physical person, can an AI do the same level? So we
Mm.
know that some parts of it AI can do, right? So we can do X-rays better, we can do this better, but still there are advanced parts, like how do you reason about what the disease is, how
Right.
do you reason about what to study next, how do you reason about exactly which fertilizer to use. Those layers are still not done, but when they are also done, so really social sector is not is really about building trust in people, so they can start adopting AI as an alternative, not because it is scalable, but because it is more accurate, or at least as accurate as a human expert. And that's
Got
where
it.
we need to go. That is our benchmark. Yeah.
Yeah, no, very interesting. And absolutely. I think, it's so true, right? Which is a lot of us, the reason for using technology, I think you said it very well, is, the connection with people and having them obviously trust it, right? And I think if you don't have this, the technology could be the smartest technology, but then you won't be able to have the impact, right? And I think that is, that's so true to every single thing that we try to build, right? So, one interesting thing, because, from the sounds of it and looks at it, and getting a little technical here, which is, this kind of technology like AI ML, we know is a lot better in English. We think English first, right? When you try to get all of this to solve the problems in India, right? Do we have to think ground up? Is it, let's say, hey, think ground up? Is it that, hey, what's there, take that and build on top of this? Or how do you view that, right? How is it that, something that's there, where does it, is it like a simple conversion here, or is it a ground up thinking at this point?
Yes. Great question. So I think there are certain parts of it which are country agnostic. Like, for example, how does an X-ray of a COVID looks like is universal, right? How does a cough to COVID detection is universal, right? So certain parts are universal. We don't need to think about those as Indian versus West. Certain parts are same technology as is can be applied with Indian data, right? So wherever we have lots of data, like we have in English, let's say in Hindi, we could
Hmm.
do those approaches with lots of data in Hindi and other languages which we have lots of data. But the technology can be same, right? Same thing with face recognition. Technology can be safe, same. All I have to do is replace it with Indian faces, right? So
Right.
that is the second layer. So one is universal set of technologies as is we can adopt. Second is Indianize them, keep the algorithm same, push the data differently, and do it. Third
Hmm.
is where the real innovation will happen, which is, for example, if you took a speech in English, English has a lot of, silent words and pneumonia and all of that. But Indian languages are a lot more phonetic in nature, right? So if you
Yeah.
recognize the key differences between the nature of the data, the nature of the approach will also change. And I think that, in phonetic languages, building speech models should be easier than in non-phonetic languages, right? So
Interesting.
now, it's not just about taking, the same models and applying it to Indian data. It's about knowing these nuances and say where we can come up with a different approach versus where we can adopt the same approach with the new data. And the fourth is, I think the new use cases are going to bring in more innovation in AI. So, like we talked about earlier, right? So, today we have built bottom up models for everything. but we don't know how to combine them together. And that's where the reasoning will happen. So in a way, we have built the eyes, we have built the ear, we have built the nose, we have built the motor system, but we haven't yet built the brain that can combine all this and think about how to reason and think about
Right.
from thinking, right? How do you do customer lifetime value? How do you do strategic thinking around the student's education in the long term, and not
Mm.
just apply one-off APIs and be done with it? So that layer is still missing everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Even Googles and Amazons have not gone to that level, and that's where the new innovation in AI will happen, which is, given that we have built these basic building blocks, given that we can improve them all day long, now we need to look at the next layer and combine them to create solutions for different verticals. And that is where the next innovation is coming. And that is when we'll recognize that, oh, this one API at the lower level is missing, without which I cannot do. Other APIs
Mm.
are present. That's when the need will drive new innovation at the lower level of APIs that we need to do.
Yeah. No, that's very interesting, right? And I think that's kind of, if you look at it, right, everyone in this space, right, everyone is like, I think, waiting for that. Everyone's expecting that, okay, when can we start reasoning, right? When can this AI really, when they call smart, right? I think that's what they're all questioning. And I think, as you said, right, I think we have a lot of the right pieces in place. How do you build a brain to really do all that is I think, some of the biggest challenges, right? So what are your thoughts? How are you bullish on this? Do you think we'll be getting there sooner rather than later? Since you're obviously very kind of close to the problem, right? What are your take on how far are we from building that brain, or at least starting getting close to building a brain that can keep maturing over a period of time? So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think so. This whole journey of artificial general intelligence, right? That is what is happening. So we have done specific AI for different boxes. Now we are going to that. I'll give you one example. So if you look at search, right, for the last 20
Mm.
years, Google has not changed the search paradigm. We still do keyword based, and we get 10 blue links, and the user has to figure out. After 20 years, Google is now thinking, oh, we want to be a question answering company, not a search engine. What is the
Mm.
difference between question? Why does it take 20 years to migrate from search to question answering? We have to think. And once we understand that, then you will know the key difference between AI and artificial general intelligence. So let me tell you that insight, right? See, search can be done in the same way no matter what query you give me, right? I do matches, I do click boost, I do navigation boost, I get a search engine. It doesn't matter which domain, which area, I can do keyword based. So there is a universal
Right.
algorithm for search. Problem is, with question answering, there is no universal algorithm. For example, if I ask you a question, what is the capital of India? The way you will do that, you will convert that into a sequence of knowledge graph queries is very different. If I ask you which is the longest river in India, you will solve that question differently, because you have to say, tell me all rivers in India, tell me their lengths, and then do the max on it. That is reasoning, right? So for every question, if you have to do reasoning, that is what makes it a 20-year difficult problem, right? So now, see, search was a
Mm.
single paragraph, keyword to match. Question answering, now every question has to be converted into these 5, 6 questions, sub questions, and then reasoning has to happen, and then that program has to be executed. Now, if you look at Alexa skill sets, that's what they're doing manually,
Yeah.
right? Code up all Alexa skill sets for every journey that a customer can have. That's not how we are going to build AI. That is brute force approach.
Yeah.
What we are working on, for example, is, can you create a system that can automatically convert a user question into a program, not to solve the program? So it's kind of like a compiler, right?
Mm.
uh, Take a natural language question, convert it into a program that says, first give me this, then get every attribute of this, then do a max on it. Can I write a layer which can automatically convert a question into a DAG in a program? Unless we are able to do it, we will not build a universal question answering system. That is the difficulty that Google and everybody is facing now on question answering, right? So
Mm.
that's an example of, if somebody cracks that, how does an AI automatically write a program from a question to its building blocks, like look up this, do all the SQL queries on a knowledge graph, and then combine the output and input of each to come up with an answer, right? And what
Mm.
Watson has done, is the same thing in a very different way. But the right way to do it would be a reasoning way of doing it. And if we can crack that, that is my first moonshot in the next generation AI. Like that,
Wow.
we have many such problems, right? How do you
Yeah.
do reinforcement learning for agriculture? How do you do reinforcement learning for education? How do you do
Mm.
reinforcement learning for, healthcare, for example, right? So it's a sequence of actions. You do yoga, you take medicines, you lead a healthy life. It is a cumulative thing. So today we
Yeah.
are only one-off things. Recognize this medicine or recognize this picture, but we are not doing sequential thing, and that's when we go to the next generation of AI. That's what we are all
Interesting.
looking for us to happen, and that's what I am spending my time on. I'm going to assume that all the lower level APIs are done.
Got
Unless
it.
we keep spending time on that, we'll keep building a better and better event net for the rest of our life, and we're
Yeah.
not going to solve the next generation AI problem. Yeah?
Right. No, no,
Layer,
absolutely. Yeah. Sounds, and I think that's kind of what makes it so exciting, right? I mean, when it all comes that, hey, you have a program, building it, taking a query and building it into another program, which then does, and you kind of collectively get a, as we call, ensemble of models together to really make it happen. That's, I think, when the power comes together. But each piece is so important that even one piece missing in the middle, and you're like, oh, this doesn't make the impact I was imagining it to. No, absolutely. And I think, last question, I think in interest of time, would, from a non-technical aspect, right, just moving a little bit on the business side, would love to know your opinions on the impact a center of excellence has on, let's say, a business, right, or a bigger company and all that. Like, how do you see the impact and the importance of a center of excellence at a company, right? And what are your thoughts on that?
yes. So I divide the world into two kinds of people with respect to AI. Those who sort of are the producers of AI, who understand how to build models, and the other who are the consumers of AI. They have the use cases, right?
Hmm.
So what is missing is the layer that connects the two. And I keep talking about this, that the layer of what I call AI product managers, if you will, or AI solution thinkers, which is the layer that says, I talk to the business and say, tell me all your decisions you make. Tell me how you make them. Tell me how do you measure KPIs, right? And then tell me, what data elements you use. So that is a human decision making happening in businesses right now. We need to understand that. Then we need to translate that into an AI architecture and say, these 5 decisions could have been made better if AI was involved. And
Hmm.
then what data do you need, what modeling do you need to make those decisions? So this bridge between the producers of AI and the consumer of AI is what the role of center of excellence is. So we are kind of talking to business leaders on one side and data scientists on one side and saying, so my role is not to build a better model. My role is really to connect the right business architecture to the IT architecture to the AI architecture.
Hmm.
And then, in that AI architecture, how do you deploy the AI architecture of the business? So we know that there is something called an IT architecture of a business. What we
Right.
are not yet sure is what is an AI architecture of the business, which is very tied to the IT architecture, but it has training, it has testing, it has inferencing, it has this for every building block of decision that can be made AI driven, right? So how do we think of that? And how do we think of the entire pipeline, what I call from data to decisions? From data to
Interesting.
decisions. How do we integrate the whole thing end to end? So data comes in at its own pace through all the apps and everything. Analysis happens, decisions happen, they get delivered into our interaction layers and API. Unless we bridge this entirely and there is no human in the loop, we have not yet raised an organization from a data rich organization to an AI first organization. So that is what our journey should be, whether you are doing a startup or a big company. How do you convert your data rich company into an AI first company? What does that construct mean? What is your AI architecture? And how do you enable it end to end? So it doesn't seem like a thing at all, right? So data comes in,
Yeah.
decisions happen, it runs on its own. AI runs the business without a human in the loop is the utopian world we want to get to. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. I just dropped in to say that we're running tight on
Yeah.
time.
Nice. Perfect.
So yes, please carry on. Go ahead, Swapn.
No, I think this is kind of that makes complete sense, and I think this really gives an idea of you know what it takes to really get AI together, and why center of excellences are important. But I think that's I think what we had. If we have time for questions, happy to take it. So Santosh, you let us know if we have time or
Yes, yes. I think I mean, I actually dropped in. There's one interesting question in this COVID situation. I think you have to answer it. What are your thoughts on AI being used to combat loneliness and depression?
Oh, loneliness and depression. Well, I think Netflix is good enough or something, but loneliness and depression. I don't see these are cognitively very human problems, and we have to know what are the right problems that AI can solve. What is beyond AI, right? So, lonely and depression. I think I don't know if AI can solve that yet. Even humans cannot solve that. It's something that a spiritual system can solve, not a technology system can solve. So, I think we need to turn to another framework in case of that. But COVID itself, right? How we are able to track and predict where it will grow, how many kits are needed, those kind of things, the mechanical aspect and operational aspect of fighting with COVID, a lot of things are being done, right? As a telecom, we are able to do many things. As symptom checker app, people many things are able to do. Contact tracing, this and that. So there's a lot of work on that. And in one of my next talks that I'll give in a public forum, we'll talk about what we have done as a telecom company to fight COVID from AI and telecom data and technology.
Sure. Swapan, you want to pick up a question? I think it's there on your question section.
Sure. I see a few in there, but I'll pick up
Maybe
one
one
of
question.
them.
I think we have 30 seconds for you for one question.
Sure, I'll just take one. You spoke about the sensor layer that is not available in a lot of sectors in India. Let's take the example of agri sector. What is the
Yes.
next step in building the sensor layer beyond satellite imagery, which few folks are now using?
Yes, so we have to first identify what sensors are useful, right? So there are soil sensor is one area. See, the key is how do you build the right sensor at the cheapest cost? And because we know how to transmit the data and analyze the data, but what we don't know is like if a sensor is very expensive, will a farmer be able to use it, right? If a drone is very expensive, will we able to use it? So how do we reduce the cost of sensors and so that they are all pervasive is one area. How do we make them right? Because certain sensors like COVID testing is a sensor. How do we make that better? We are working on it, right? People are working on it. Similarly, soil testing, if I only test few things and not all things, then it's an incomplete sensor. So how do we make better sensors and how do we make cheaper sensors is what the race is. So the next big companies will be sensor companies, not AI companies.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think the same thing, which is, I feel like, there was a wave of hardware, then it came software. I think we're back in the hardware space now, right? Because we've made a lot of advancement in software, but how does hardware, software come together? And what the hardware can do for the next wave, I think is going to be absolutely important. So I think sensors, hardware, all that thing,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
going to be a,
Fitbit is a great example. It's a sensor
yeah,
company, and see how much value it can add. So sensor
ab-
companies are going to rule the world next. Not
yeah.
entertainment, not telecom, not search. Sensor companies. Think
Sure.
about that.
I
There you
think
go.
this
I think we have the
I'm
next
leaving
big
with one.
idea there.
yeah, I mean, this topic is so intriguing that I'm not able to stop myself. They're asking me to stop the session. I'm not. I quickly am going to ask one more question, pick up because that's very interesting as well. So, how do you integrate psychology and sociology in data analysis? I feel it will be important to make data plus AI reason.
Very good question. So, one of the hardest, see, the simplest things to model are the laws of nature. They're very fixed. They don't have mood swings. They're consistent across time. The hardest thing to model from an AI perspective is human behavior and human psychology, right? So, for example, modeling sensitivity of a customer to a missed, to a dropped call or to a missed ride because of a driver cancellation, sensitivity modeling is a very critical area that AI has not looked at yet, right? How do we model? So it's not about the mechanical properties of, if this variable is this, then what happens? It also has to go through whether for the same variables, is this customer more sensitive or that customer more sensitive? And that layer of AI is still missing. And that's where psychologists can help us frame that problem statement in terms of what are the dimensions to look, how do we uh, understand sensitivity parameters to different things. Because, for example, churn models cannot be built without knowing customer sensitivity to different ideas of churn. Similarly, marketing models, messaging cannot be built without knowing what kind of marketing this customer will respond to versus that. So there's a lot of human in the loop that has to be taken into account. And I think that's another area that AI has to grow up and start building personalized models and bring in psychology and other things into that.
Yeah, I think that the one thing to add from certain things we've also learned, but at Haptic we actually had a psychologist helping us build our chatbots, right? Because it's literally about how do you relate to the user, what is the feeling the user has, what is all that, and your models need to be able to figure that out, right? And I think that's where I always think when people talk about, hey, what does the next world look like with AI and ML. I think each of these roles will play an important role, but we just have to change the way we look at it. Like psychologists now will also have to play a role in AI ML, right? Like there's
Yeah.
so many different new ways we're going to see roles evolve. And by roles, I mean like human occupation roles evolve. It's going to be very interesting. And that's why, the argument of, hey, will we lose jobs? I've never believed that. I've always said we'll have to upskill and probably be adaptive, but I don't think we'll lose, right? I think it'll be like a lot of new things that open up for all of us.
Yes.
Sure, then. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so
I
much.
think before wrapping up, 30 seconds for this, please. There's one more question. How interactive AI will be presented to the user as a product so that AI would get benefit from the user? Human in the loop? Question mark.
Yes. So I think the best things are presented as if they are not there. So if you think about it, Netflix, when you go to Netflix, you don't think that there is a cloud infrastructure behind, right? When you go to the internet and Google search, you don't think that there's a whole internet infrastructure behind it and the whole Google technology behind it, right? So the interfaces have to hide all the complexity, and that is why the layer of interface is very important, right? It should be natural, and our kids should feel like it was supposed to be like that. See, that is the level to which we should go to and say, oh, if you don't know anything, go to Google. That is how we connect to technology now. Unless it becomes that natural to us, that is when. So we need to not think that AI by itself will create magic. AI plus cloud plus connectivity plus sensors together will create magic. User will see then integrated magic. User will not see AI magic or scale magic separately. So for us, we have to think the world both ways and say, how does the user look at it? Does he care whether your speech to text model is X% accurate? If he gets frustrated every time he says something and you don't understand it, that's what his experience is, right? So we need to think, and he doesn't care whether you use TensorFlow model or this model or that model, right? So all that complexity we have to hide. We have to give the user what they want without them knowing who the provider was. So we need to give them a provider agnostic from a technology point of view also. And that's when we'll win the user's trust and all of that.
Sure. Thank you so much.
So,
Swapan, your closing note.
No, thank you very much. I think, thanks, Dr. Sailesh. I think this was very helpful. It's always great to chat with you. I think there's so much to learn at every time. And I think, it was a very great, I mean, just looking at the engagement on the session, it looks like, everyone also kind of enjoyed it.
mm,
Absolutely. Thank you very much for your time. And I think, thank you everyone for joining us.
Okay.
thank you. Thank you,
Yeah,
everyone.
yeah. Mr. Shailesh, do you want to put up a closing note? I know you put up a
Yeah,
lot of statements, but still.
yeah. I mean, like everything is either a, oh, yeah, yeah. So I mean, like this is a great time to be around, as in from a technology point of view. If you are a technologist now, whether you are a product thinker, whether you are a engineering thinker, whether you are a front end designer, whether you are an AI thinker, for all of us, this is the best time to be around. And the key is that we need to think together to create solutions, and that's what we should. That's how we should build our startups. That's how we should build our teams. That's how we should build our education systems now, which are solution centric, working backwards towards technology. We are not a technology centric civilization. We are still wanting to be a solution centric solution, right? So if you want to solve COVID forever, there are solution centric thinking. If we stay as a technology centric thinkers, we will not know what next technology to build or how to improve this. We should become a solution-centric thinker and work backwards, and then discover the need and then solve the need. And that approach is very useful, at least for me, to build the right products, to build the right collection of technologies to give to the user. And user centricity, consumer centricity is not just a marketing campaign. Only those products succeed. We think about users and consumers first, and that's what we saw in the last talk also. So I think work backwards from the user. I think we'll do the right thing, both in privacy, security, interface, everywhere. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Great. Thank you,
All the
everyone.
best. Thank you. Stay safe, everyone. Bye.
Stay safe. Bye.
I can't hear you. I think Santosh is saying
Yeah,
something.
Santosh, I think if you're saying something, we can't